Hello grade 9s, welcome to today's Maths Lit video lesson. I hope you guys are doing well. Today we're going to move on to interpreting, analyzing and reporting the data. This is the section on page 284. So if you recall, our data cycle starts with a problem, then we get a plan as to how we're going to tackle this problem. We collect, organize and summarize data relevant to the problem. We represent this data. We saw the representations in the forms of various graphs, bar graphs, line graphs, scatter plots, and pie charts. And lastly, we analyze the data. So this section relates to the fourth and final part of the data cycle. So when we analyze the data, we are just going to be looking at our representations and trying to draw some conclusions, see if we can answer the questions posed in our problem. So we'll start off by looking at the worked example on page 284. So it says here that John works for his dad and earns 1,000 Rand per month, and he spends his money on various things. We have two representations that explain his spending. We have the representation histogram and a representation of a pie chart. So the histogram will show that the various amounts that he spends per month. For example, if we look at his maximum spending, which is for clothes, it looks like he spends just under 250 Rand. So our histogram would go like this. Here's the 250 mark, and the amount spent on clothes is here. And if we add up the amounts for all his other spending, for the movies, snacks, savings, music and cell phones, if we add up all those values, we should get back to 1,000. Then the pie chart shows us the proportion or percentage that he spends on each thing. So for example, with movies, he spends 100 Rand, and 100 Rand accounts for 10% of his total spending, 10% of the 1,000 Rand. So on our pie chart, we're just looking at the movies slice. It would be 10%. And if we wanted to know the angle, it would be 10% of 360 degrees. Or we could write it like this. We could say that 100 Rand out of 1,000 Rand is the fraction, and we just times it by 360 degrees. Or we could say 10% times 360 degrees. And either way, we'll get the same answer. We'll get that this angle over here is 36 degrees. So this question is asking which representation is more applicable. Is the bar graph better or is the pie chart better? Well, it depends what you're trying to look for. If you're looking at monetary amounts, the values that he's spending, then the histogram is better because it shows the exact values. However, if you're looking at proportion, if you're looking at which proportion is bigger or smaller, then the pie chart is better. It shows the sizes of each of the slices. So next we're going to be looking at a comparison between two different pie charts. This is the example on page 285. So each of these pie charts is representing language choice as a school subject in two different time periods, 2001 and 2010. So in 2001, we have a proportion of language choice, and in 2010, we show how this proportion has changed. So for example, English in 2001 was 50% of learners' choices, and in 2010 this dropped to 40%. Afrikaans as a language choice also dropped, started off at 20% in 2001 and decreased to 15% in 2010. This blank portion represents the African languages, Zulu and Xhosa, and if these two European languages decreased as a proportion, that means that the choice for African language increased. So there might be various reasons for this. Afrikaans is not everybody's favorite subject, so maybe that's why it decreased. Another reason for more learners wanting to learn the African languages is maybe for business, for easier communications as we live in an African country. So lastly, I'm going to look at the challenge problem on page 287. And here we have a pie chart with some missing information. We have that this is a collection of toy cars and that there are 220 toy cars in total with various colors: blue, gray, white, black and red. And they're looking at the proportion of the colors that make up the collection. So for example, there are 45% of gray cars. Now the missing proportions, the missing percentages are for white and red. So they give us some additional information here that 22 of the cars are red. So now we can easily work out the percentage of red cars. We'd say that the fraction of red cars is 22 out of 220. And if we want to get the fraction to a percentage, we just times it by 100. And that would give us 22%. Okay, so for red, the percentage is 22. Now, how can we work out the missing percentage for white? We have all the other percentages. So we know that all of the percentages have to add up to 100. So this missing piece plus everything else must give us 100%. So if we add up here, we've got 45 plus 15 is 60, plus 22 is 82, plus 5 is 87. So we've got 87% plus the percentage of white must give us 100%. So then the missing piece, the missing white percentage, must be 13% because 13 plus 87 is 100. Okay, so it also asks us to now find the number of white cars in the collection. So we only have the proportion 13%, but we can say that the number of white cars is going to be 13% of the total. So let's work that out. Number of white cars equals 13% of 220, and that gives us, so this works out to 28.6%. Okay, if you're struggling with percentages, you can always treat it like a fraction, and here you could just say that 13% is the same as 13 out of 100, and then we times it by 220, we get the same thing, 28.6. So that concludes today's video lesson, a relatively short section, and next lesson we'll be finishing the section on data handling. And I've left you guys a little bit of homework on this section. It's exercise 24.1 on page 286, number 1 and 3. So yeah, thanks guys, thanks for watching and take care.